What up, everyone? Thank you so much for joining us and tuning in to The Scoop with Cindy and Coop. I am Cindy Robinson, and I am joined with my lovely co-host, Candace Cooper, aka Coop. We're going to just share a little bit about ourselves so you know who's talking to you and who you're watching or whatever. Candace, let's start with you. Tell us
Cool.
about yourself.
So, of course, born and raised country girl from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I have had quite the journey when it comes to sports. Working in media has been the last resort. Apparently, I talk very well, and that's where I'm headed towards. But I've done operations. I've done, being one of those panhandlers at games. I've done every part of the aspect besides the one that makes a lot of money. So I'm ready for that next level. You know what I'm talking about? So
Gotta get up there.
I feel a GM in my spirit.
Okay.
But
Big
yeah,
goals. Big goals.
yeah, 100%. But audio has definitely been my lane. Been working in sports radio, had some podcasts, and now I'm just really doing my thing one step at a time. Really, just waiting for my next.
Love it, love it. I too have had less, I will say I have less of a journey than Candace in the sense of how many different areas, but I've mainly been on the sports media side, social media, on camera, behind camera, editing, all that content stuff. I've done a little bit of it all. Worked for pro teams. That's how me and Candace met, actually. I worked for media companies, covered in Olympics. We'll talk about that one time maybe. But yeah, I've done a little bit. Brazil, 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Fun times, fun times. We'll have to
So you were
touch
in
on.
Rio?
I was in Rio.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
I
I didn't know that. I'm not even trying to be funny.
Candace.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know
Okay,
that.
well, I guess I don't talk about it a lot because it was so many years
You
ago,
don't.
but I feel like I told you because it was the summer before. I mean, it was two summers, like a year before I met you. Like, you know what I mean?
We've lived a lot of life together.
We have. Okay. Okay. Well, nonetheless, yes, I've had a little dibble and dabble here in sports media, and now
Yeah.
working at a media company and trying to, get back into the on-camera thing and see how it goes. But me and Candace have talked about this so much.
Right.
Honestly, this has been a long time coming, and we finally just said this is perfect time because what? We're in quarantine.
Quarantine is rough. Being in COVID is
Yeah.
rough, and trying to figure out when you're gonna go outside is rough. I don't know how people are playing sports right now when there's a
Mm.
pandemic outside, and for Black people, it's two pandemics, so it's been a little rough.
Oh.
Yeah.
And see, we can only do so much with the time given to us today. But if you tune into our episodes, we're going to touch on a little bit of everything going on.
Absolutely.
I think the best segue to start with is what's got us all stuck in the house right now, and that is COVID-19, better known as coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. I've heard all types of names. I call it the Rona. Not trying to lighten it what it is, but it's just,
I
the
call it
Rona.
Coronita. Like, I personally like Coronas, so I don't even want to play about Corona. I don't like how Corona has been given such a bad name because I love Coronas. I'll drink a Corona and lime, bloody Corona, like all of that. And now I'm just be in the store trying to buy a Corona, feeling awkward, like I shouldn't. Just get a Modelo. It's fine.
I'm not a beer drinker, so I leave that to you. Okay, that didn't hurt my feelings none. I'm just
No.
kind of, I'm just shocked at how this all has happened, but more so how sports has tried to trickle back in. Now, I want to quickly shout out the WNBA because they've been one of the best leagues who have dealt with returning and completing their season. Like they started their season in a bubble, completed it. Shout out to Seattle Storm for getting that win as WNBA champions. And even the NBA, they've done a pretty good job, which we kind of expected because they're one of those leagues that's pretty much on the forefront of everything when things are going.
But are you surprised that women did it the best? Like, let's keep it a buck.
No, no,
I
like
mean,
that's
not only
obvious.
they had to be moms, they had to be athletes, they had to be
Yeah.
girlfriends, wives, all that good stuff, and still try and be athletes, professional athletes at that, right? So,
Right. I know because I've noticed that a lot of them had their children in the bubble with them. And I don't know if that's just like a caretaker thing, like a nurturing thing, like you don't want to leave your child for X amount of months without you. Whereas the men kind of like, that's the only option. You staying at home with your mama. You know what I'm saying? So like, there are a lot more factors that the women had to, consider and think of, and I feel like, put it off flawlessly. I'm trying to think. There was only like maybe one incident where they were like, there may be some issues with testing, or like someone might, some little thing, which is expected. No one thought everything would be perfect, but I think overall, like, they were one of those leagues that did it really well. I think the NHL has done well. MLB it has had some struggles, but I think they're getting it. I think they're getting it back on track for the most part. I don't know.
I think we just stopped talking about it, because if you think about it, MLB started out with all those cases because there were so many teams, but now there's not that many teams. It's not, people partying, and they get that it's a serious thing. And we're really into crunch time. October is baseball's big old Rocktober. You get ready to play. That's when the big boys start. So everyone's focused now. Corona's not going away. So everyone's full focus.
Right. And I mean, and the NBA is almost over. They're in finals now, and they've had
I'm ready for it to be over. I'm gonna just go ahead.
Are you in tune to the finals? Like, have you been watching every game?
Okay. I mean, yes, because I have to, but like, I'm cool either way. Like, is LeBron going another championship? Yeah. Is he one of the greatest? Yes. We're gonna have the same old damn arguments. Yes. Like, it's just tired. Like, I'm tired. I was ready for something new. Like, I was like, all right, Giannis, let's go. Like, we're about to have. And then he just, messed it up. Like, how you gonna be regular season MVP and then you can't? Yeah, okay.
It was. But my thing is, it was a weird year, right? Like, they started their season, they had to stop it, took that time off, and then came back starting in the bubble system. And it's like, with everything going on, having to consider new families, like a lot of them have new children, Giannis being one of them. That's a lot, right? A lot, like, to consider. You got to make sure that you're not contracting the virus. Yes, they were in a situation where they were getting tested daily and, protected in a sense, but it was still that fear of like, I don't know what I'm risking right now.
But also, you think about the fact that his go-to man was Chris Middleton, and hell no, like, that's not who you think. I think Chris Middleton looks like somebody who plays at the YMCA, personally. Like, he's not an all-star to me. He's just not. He's not. He doesn't give me all-star vibes.
So we started with shade, huh? We just throwing it out there.
When I look at AD and I look at LeBron, I'm like, okay, if I'm having an off night, I know somebody can carry me. When I'm Giannis, I'm like, it's either me, all or nothing. And so I don't want to be a part of a team where it's all or nothing. Like, why are you on a team then?
Oh, so you're with the super. See, look, we veering off left. Look, we got combos for days.
No, it's okay. I'm with teams. I'm with teams that have. I like Miami Heat. I appreciate the Miami Heat.
I do too.
They play unselfish basketball.
But I also didn't mind the Miami Heat when LeBron joined them. And a lot of people had an issue with that because that was a super team. I had a little more issue with the other one on the West, but we ain't gonna dig too deep in that one. So I forgot to say this. I am from the LA area. I don't claim LA per se. I mean, I do. I've lived all over.
Are you a Lakers fan?
That's what I'm about to touch on.
Okay.
No, I'm not. I'm not a Lakers fan, but I'm not necessarily rooting against them. I like to do it as a joke to people because people get so upset with me. Like, how are you from LA?
So you're a Lakers fan?
I was rooting for them in the sense of like, I like rooting for the underdogs. I like those stories, But
I'm in love with Kawhi, so it's fine. I'm for that. Yeah.
Well, whatever motivates you, right?
Yeah.
I would have liked to see them two go at it in the Western Conference Finals. That didn't happen. I loved watching the Trailblazers. I'm all for those teams where it's like we're really grinding for it and getting out better. Not saying the Lakers didn't grind for it because we know they've been on a struggle bus, but you have two major all-stars. And I was like, no. First, when LeBron was going, I was against it. And yeah, there wasn't necessarily nobody for him to team up with there, but I just didn't want him to do it. It felt like certain people just aren't supposed to play for certain teams, like almost in a sense of like Larry Bird should never play for the Lakers, Magic Johnson should never play for the Celtics type of thing. That's what for me. It may not make sense for others, but for me, that's how the vibe I got. And then I just got over it. Okay, he's there, but I've always been a LeBron fan, so it's been kind of hard for me.
Well, it's a new year, and so now that we have COVID, do you even consider this a real championship because of this season?
Okay, at the end of the day, a championship is a championship. I'm not gonna take the heart because like everybody had to deal with the same circumstance. So that's my one thing where I'm
Did
like,
they? Did they?
they did.
I mean,
Everybody had to sacrifice
you
to go
just
play in
talked
the bubble.
about, okay, cool. So you talked about families and people having babies and then people having to leave their, significant others. I don't know too many single dads that are bringing kids to the bubble, but still, everyone has something. People had to come into the bubble because they tested positive and then leave and, all that good stuff. So some people opted out altogether. Like Avery Bradley's not going to be playing.
But see, he was aware of what he could handle. He knew it wasn't for him and said, deuces. Okay, I'll catch y'all next year.
Yeah. I mean, he said this is also because we have a whole, racial inequality going on right now that happens every day. And he said this is bigger than basketball, and that would take away from it, which I still think everyone needs to give Kyrie an apology.
He deserves his applause, but I'm also not mad at the ones who felt like playing and speaking out on this platform, at these games, people are watching and being able to speak post game for, everything. I'm not mad at them for feeling like that was a good platform to speak up on these things as well. I completely understand what
like you felt like games were the appropriate place to do stuff like that?
I feel like, sorry about that smack, y'all. I feel like I feel like that is your arena to speak, if that makes sense. Like, yes, everyone's always going to listen to LeBron wherever he speaks, whether it be opening a school, uninterrupted, whatever the case may be, right? But think about how many of those other players that don't have the platforms like LeBron does, in the sense of capturing everybody's attention outside of the basketball world. And all those people who are literally stuck at home with nothing else to do, so they're like, let me tune into this, and they're seeing that. The jerseys, I know people were on the fence about it, but I feel like they were powerful in their own right. I have mixed feelings. Like, I don't disagree with people who felt like they shouldn't have returned, and I don't necessarily agree either. I'm kind of like,
see, I don't feel like
I'm just gonna go with the flow and see what happens.
When I read a shirt that says "say their names," that doesn't make me say, "Oh, you know what? Let me go run out in the streets. Let me go donate. Let me go, figure out more and learn more. Listen and learn like these corporations are telling us." It doesn't, spark that for me. Equality on the back of a t-shirt doesn't spark that for me.
But it's a reminder of the stuff that's happened. Like, you've heard them say those things, though. It's not like they.
Okay, that's fine. But I also don't think that you having a press conference and only repeating Breonna Taylor's name, one time, that's fine. I also would have appreciated, like, let's have people who are well versed in the subject speak. Like, I'm bringing in so and so person who is an expert in this field. Like, there are times with which you're beyond your scope, and I think in instances of Breonna's case, like, there were certain things that were beyond your scope, and even with other cases, right? I think it was time to see, like, to show and showcase people who are on the streets, who are doing the grassroots efforts. Let's talk about these organizations. Let's highlight those. With all these teams around the country, there are people doing that work in those respective cities. That was a perfect opportunity to me, especially for guys who just don't know any different. And then it made guys who were like, I'm still listening and learning, or I don't necessarily agree. You had to be like, oh, well, why don't you agree? Why are you upset? And we saw that, with a bunch of guys being like, oh, well, you're not on the squad or you're not down. It's like, well, maybe they don't know better, right? And maybe their ignorance is something that they have to outgrow, but we shouldn't force them to, like, have to perform just because that's what we're all expecting right now.
So, did we feel like the bubble, if honestly all these sports returning, do we feel like they were forced into it, or do we feel like they made the decision and they should have made the decision to opt out for the sake of sending a message?
I feel like opting out, I probably would have opted out just because I think the focus is lost. Again, like, I agree with Kyrie. Like, even if I think if he was healthy, he wouldn't have played, because the message gets mixed when you're like, all right, let's do this spoken, like last night, for example, when you had Angela Bassett and Jamie Foxx, and all the people doing these spoken words to try and, talk about basketball and how they're predominantly Black. That's cool. But then when the whistle blows, we're still talking about hoops, right? So, like, do we still care about things that are going on? Like, are we still, like, passionate about it because you had this, like, 7-minute one-off? Probably not. Like, it loses that for me. I think there were opportunities that were missed.
I feel that. I think I agree. I think there are so many other things going on. I think with the pandemic, the social injustice, all of that kind of rocked the regular schedule of sports, right? And I'm mainly gonna say I feel like who's been affected more negatively so far, in my opinion, has been the NFL, because their off season was like completely cut. You know, their off season workouts with the teams. And I know the NFL is going with this whole honor system, but my wholehearted belief is that these players aren't doing what you want them to do outside of that facility. You know, so a lot of them aren't going to practice as hard. You know, they're posting the videos like we grinding, but a lot of them aren't doing what they would do in front of their coach and their teammates, right? A lot of them just, to me, weren't prepared, and that kind of shows in the injuries that we saw. In the we're only 4 weeks in. Well, this is the fifth week, and there's so many people out that with season-ending injuries too. Granted, I know some things just happen. You know what I mean? Like we know sports is sports, especially a contact sport like football. But a lot of that was clearly from like the lack of preseason, the lack of off-season training, and then like you just all that time you're worrying about so many other things, the social injustice, the pandemic. Like there's so much piling up that I kind of feel like sports should have been suspended this year. But I don't know where that would have left the economy for sports, because you know that's all about money. And I mean, from our point of view of working in media covering it, from the people who are taking care of the facilities, from the front offices, you know, it's a never ending cycle of how many people would be affected, right? But I feel like there's always a story, there's always something, there's always a way. But again, a lot of people had layoffs and stuff. So for me, I want to ask you, how do you feel about the NFL's return versus how the NBA returned? Like, how do you feel like it's going?
Well, I don't think it's feasible to ask nearly over 100 men and train, when you include staff and trainer, all that good stuff, and coaches, excuse me. It's not realistic to have a bubble. So that was never going to happen, right? Should they have had hubs where they're only going to play out of certain cities? Absolutely. But we've missed that mark. Like we missed all of those opportunities. Now we're just going to be playing catch up until we try and finish out a 16-game season. If that even happens, we see the Titans right now are in jeopardy, and there are, the Bills don't want to play the Titans, which they shouldn't have to. Like, I think if there are guys that are like 10 people or more on your team that have tested positive, why are you forcing another team to be like, yeah, go on in there, give it your all? And you know why they're telling them to do that? Because money rules the world. Like this is capitalism. And so we're going to sit here and say, Miami Dolphins, you can have your entire stadium filled with people after we have all these positive cases and people dying in your cities respectively. Yes, please fill your stadium. It makes absolutely no sense. And I, rally around anybody who's like, you know what? I thought this was for me. I thought this was going on. I thought people were doing and being responsible, but they're not. And I want to opt out. And it's unfortunate that the NFL gave them a deadline. They were like, you have to choose whether or not you're going to play or not. And it just shows just the piss poor, top down, how the NFL operates. It's like, to me, cash rules. I want you're either going to play or you're not. We don't have an opinion. And if you do get out of line, we're going to ensure that you get right back in, or we're going to move on to the next. Like, to me, NFL is very next man up. And NBA has a luxury of being like, if our leaders say no, we have to say no. And that's not the case for the NFL at all.
So here's the other question then, because recently we've seen that there's been outbreaks, like you mentioned, and now you have people having to sit out games, but then the NFL has a negligence in how they allowed certain games to continue, without considering that window of someone else could still test even after this certain time or whatever the case may be. And now we see that with the Patriots, right? Do you feel like this is on the NFL as the league, or do you feel like this is on the players for not doing what they need to do, for what they wanted, right? They're the ones who wanted to play. They wanted it to be safe for themselves, and they were holding the league accountable to keep them safe, to come up with a plan to keep them safe. But don't they have to own up to like their part too?
I mean, you opted in, sure, but at the end of the day, when you're trusting someone saying that we're doing everything we can to ensure safety, you're hoping that they're actually meaning what they say. However, we've been living long enough, and we've seen how people can get up and cut. We can see people get up and traded. We see like all these things, people who've been stars of a team going somewhere else in the season when their time is up or whatever. So I would not trust the NFL as far as I can throw them. I would sign my guarantee money and ensure that I have great insurance, because we don't know what's going to happen, right? We don't know how, after 2020 things are going to look and how much people are going to suffer because of it. yet and still they're going to play. And that's absolutely asinine to me. But I'm going to ask you, like, you saw the Patriots-Chiefs game. You saw Stephon Gilmore hug up Patrick Mahomes, $500 million man who just announced that he was having a baby. What would you do?
So, like, realistically, I said that they should not come back. They should wait it out until there's some resolve with this virus. I do think at the end of the day, health is more important than wealth in any capacity, because if you're not here to spend the money, what does it matter that you made the money? So when they announced that they were going to start, on time and all of that, I was like, watch, I give it like, and I hate to say this as if I was praying on the downfall, or if, I was jinxing, but I'm like, no, there's just no way, like, we can do all this testing, but there's something that's going to get under the cracks, especially when you're allowing everyone to go home and be about their business every day, like regular, like regular, like, and I've seen players be around each other.
Do you think all 4,000 tests are actually accurate when they're all positive or they're all negative? That's my thing. You think all the results that they come out and they're like, there were only 3 tests positive? Okay.
Well, I think the confusing part to me is that how are we now at this point where they're able to get a rapid result, whereas before they were saying it would take a few days, or you know what I mean? Like, I feel like we came up with answers to things for the convenience of we want a season, and to me that didn't really sit right. So I knew something was going to be off. I didn't expect for it to be a situation of people were going to know about negative tests and not speak up about it, which kind of seems like has been the case.
You know that.
I mean, I was giving people the benefit of the doubt. That's all I was saying. I was trying to give people the benefit of the doubt.
No. If you've been a competitive athlete, right? And if your coach, or this is your contract year, this is something that you're very much like, listen, I have to go hard to go home. I'm asymptomatic. You mean to tell me you're going to sit here and tell your coach, like, yeah, coach, I've been infected and I can't play. And you're trying to get that start.
So, like, but knowing that it's 1 or 2 games you have to sit out versus a whole season and possibly your life, or affecting you in some other way long-term down the road, or infecting somebody else who has a family that they have to go home to. Like, no, I would speak up. I know money is like one of those things where it's like, oh, you fighting for that, you want this, you've been grinding for this forever. But at some point you gotta have some morals, you gotta have some values there. Like,
you're speaking from a smart 28-year-old intelligent woman. I'm talking about a 22-year-old.
You gotta tell everybody my business.
What's wrong?
Disregard that. We're gonna have to edit that out. I'm just kidding.
Oh my Lord.
But no, you're right. You're 100% right. And that was one of my issues though. Like, you're allowing everyone to go home daily, and you're talking about rookies who, they gonna do what they want to do. People gonna do what they want to do at the end of the day. They're gonna take Ubers.
But it's not even like going out clubbing and partying. It's literally
but it's about who you're surrounding yourself with. Like, you think, and I won't say I'm not guilty of hanging out with a few friends through this quarantine, right? But one thing I will say is that we've all been tested. We've all been quarantining and keeping to ourselves. Like, I am very mindful of who I'm surrounding myself by. Granted, you can catch that being out at the grocery store and rub it up on the wrong person. So all of it is a risk, right? But at the time, like, for me, I'm only risking myself. I haven't been home to see my family because of this. And when I do go for the holidays, I'm going to make sure I get tested before, and take all the precautions that I can ahead of time. But in their case, yeah, there should be more precautions taken. I don't know if I agree that I don't think it's all on them. And I do think the NFL should have came up with a better plan, or halted until they could have came up with a better plan. So now my question for you is, with all these tests happening right now and it's coming back positive, are you for suspending the season either indefinitely or for a period of time to figure out a better plan? Or are you keep letting it go and just figure it out as we go along?
You're going to have to keep going, because if you suspend it, football is not like basketball. It's not one of those where you can just get out of rhythm and then get right back. Like, you're going to injure more people by doing that, so absolutely not. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen. I think I agree with you on that. Probably not going to suspend the season, but I do think like a week or two halt might not be the worst idea. Because last week week 4 should have probably been halted altogether. Like, we need to get back to the drawing board, figure some things out, make sure people are okay. There's like, yeah,
No,
it should have.
we should have done that in
A
January.
week would not have hurt nobody.
Ain't nothing gonna be figured out in 2 weeks from now. They should have figured that
But
out.
the problem was during the off season, everybody was thinking like, okay, next month is gonna be better. Next month is gonna be better. And next month came and it wasn't better.
Well, you think about who we're talking about. We're talking about CEOs, owners, Roger Goodell and those types who are in a different kind of company than where we are, right? You can have different kind of conversations. You can have a heads up about things that are going on that we are not privy to. So to me, it's like, it's irresponsible to sit here and say, oh yeah, well, we're just hoping it passes along. We'll be fine. Like, no, you can pick up the phone and call up over there in the Oval Office and see what's really going down, or you can be privy to the conversation that we will never know, right? And so to me, you're doing these players a disservice by assuring them that things are going to be okay when you know for a fact that you don't have proper data to say that, and you cannot ensure that these people are not going to be taking a risk. Like, it's one of those things where you watch a commercial and at the bottom is that white little print that says may cause nausea, heartburn, indigestion, and might kill you.
Stomach diarrhea.
But please take this drug to help battle your depression. Like, what the hell? I might as well keep the depression if it's gonna be all that. Like, right? So to me, it's COVID. I mean, you take COVID tests all the time. I took COVID tests because I'm about to be in a wedding, and I'm just like, I need that assurance that things are gonna be fine. Because if you pop up positive, everybody has that scare. I'm sure Stephon Gilmore's like, I'm asymptomatic, and still's like, okay. I have family. I have people that I need to be around, and it's going to affect people differently, especially as Black people, and it's a predominantly Black league. Like, come on, people. They take care of their families, right? So you can't be around your grandma, you can't be around auntie and all of them for like an entire season. You can't be around your kids like you want to. I mean, look at Russell Wilson. He just had a baby, and now you have all this going on with the Seahawks or with the Titans and stuff. And I would, how come play? And if honestly, if I was a wife, don't come around me with that. We're gonna be in this house.
Well,
we're gonna have a great season.
I wonder if that has been the case. I wonder if some families have separated and decided that, like, I'm gonna just bounce over here for a little bit while you're doing that on a daily just for our safety. I wouldn't blame them.
No.
At all. This was fun, Candace. First episode out the way. Don't pay me no mind, guys. Anyways, no. Thank you all for tuning in to our first episode of The Scoop with Cindy and Coop. I always want to say Candace and Coop, and I'm like, well, are you a part of this? Are you just gonna forget yourself? What's up? But yeah, it does. It really does.
What are you looking forward most about sharing with the rest of the people, as we get this show going?
Honestly, I think this is probably something where I am able to show more of my personality, because it's like no restrictions. It's just us doing this, and I think it helps so much more than I'm talking to a friend. Like, our conversation just flows. So more than anything, just letting people see more of who I am, who you are, and how our thought process is about sports, life, period. We'll get into other stuff. It won't just be an only sports show, but I do want y'all to know, support your women in sports, because we know what we're talking about. Okay.
Period. And tune in next week. What we're gonna talk about next week? We obviously got more NFL action, and we're gonna wrap up the NBA finals, and then
we're gonna talk about fantasy. We're gonna talk about fantasy football.
Cindy, I'm gonna be the interviewer, and Cindy's gonna be the interviewee. Wait, how's that work?
Yes, because although I know a lot of athletes don't care about fantasy, like they hate even the thought of it, like don't bother them with that stuff. Me personally, I do like to play, but I'm not one of them crazy.
Let's talk about next week.
Next week.
Got it.
Next week. Gotcha.